Hi everyone, it's Heidi here with Self Grounded Therapy, and it is May. May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. So I've decided that I'm going to share some videos with you that I'm going to release throughout this month to talk about different topics of mental health, particularly the ones in which I focus on in my practice. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the videos I'm going to release. I'm also going to give you some statistics and just general information about those particular mental health challenges, so that you know, that you are aware that they're there and that you might be able to share a little bit of information with other people who don't know as much, because mental illness does affect many of us in America and many of us all over the globe. But I'm going to be talking about the United States specifically and what you can expect from this upcoming month as far as videos go. So this week, I'm actually going to be releasing more than just one. So I'll release this one. Obviously, I'm talking about Mental Health Awareness Month. But I also am releasing a video today about a meditation for you to ground and to have an experience with the qualities of self, which is an internal family systems thing. Self is internal family systems, but I just walk you through the meditation to help you experience different qualities of self so that you can have a body experience of that. So I'm releasing that today. Tomorrow I'm going to release a video on anxiety, and all of the videos the 4 videos that I'm going to release about the topics of mental health, I'm recording them in ways to put them on my website so that when people come to my website, they can watch the video or they can read a description about anxiety. And all of my videos will have kind of a format of what is the topic. So like, what is anxiety and how does it show up and what does that look like in your body, or how much you notice if you're experiencing anxiety. And then I talk about like what that mental illness might be. It's not a mental illness. What that part of you, because I use internal family systems, so what that part of you might be saying when it's bringing up whatever it's bringing up. So if it's bringing up anxiety, I talk to you about what it might be saying and kind of help you to see that it could be potentially actually informing you about something important in your life and it needs some attention. And then I talk a little bit about how internal family systems could support you to help ease the symptoms or the intensity of the anxiety or of any of the other mental challenges that I will talk about, and how therapy can actually help with that. So there'll be 4 videos of that. They'll be on anxiety, depression, trauma, and suicide or suicidal ideation. Each one of those will be released in the upcoming weeks. Tomorrow I will release the video on anxiety and I'll put it up on my website. Next week I'm going to release the video on depression. The week after that will be trauma, and then the final week will be suicidal thoughts in particular. So I'm going to go back to anxiety and just give you a little bit of information about anxiety and this data, the statistics. This is the only video that I'm really going to do statistics in. The other videos I'm not really going to talk about statistics. I'm going to talk about how it really shows up, maybe in your life. Maybe you've experienced that. But anxiety, well, all of this information I got from the Mental Health America website, and they do studies and gather data. So this is where all of that information comes from. So anxiety is one of the most common mental health challenges in America. Its prevalence is pretty big. There are 42.5 million Americans who struggle with anxiety or have some kind of anxiety diagnosis. And those are just the ones that are diagnosed. Those aren't the ones that nobody has talked about. Depression is also one of the most common mental health challenges, but it's not as common as anxiety anymore. Right now, there are 17.3 million Americans, adults, this is just adults, who have some diagnosis of depression. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder is a disorder that you can get for trauma, and the numbers of that there are 12 million Americans, adults, who have post-traumatic stress disorder, have that diagnosis. Now, with trauma, the trauma that I work with is often more complex trauma, which there isn't a clear diagnosis for. People can get diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, but sometimes the trauma that I work with may or may not actually be diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder, and the trauma itself comes from generally early childhood abuse or neglect or attachment issues. It may not have actually been one specific thing that led to the trauma. It could have actually been a multiple combinations of some event or some attachment that happened over and over and over and over again, and then as an adult somebody has complex trauma. So that's what I'm going to talk about in the trauma one more so, but the statistics were only available for post-traumatic stress disorder. And then suicidal thoughts. So in America, there are 9.8 million adults who have suicidal thoughts. So suicide is actually a much more prevalent, especially suicidal thoughts, than I think many of us think about. It's pretty common actually to have thoughts of suicide at some point in your life. Some people experience chronic suicidal thoughts, meaning they have had suicidal thoughts for a very long time in their life. And then there are other people who have acute suicidal thoughts, which is maybe a certain circumstance or a situation happened and suicidal thoughts came up because there wasn't enough, or there was too much happening in life, and getting out was just a coping skill that came up. But then once the situation is solved, generally those suicidal thoughts will diminish, which is different from chronic suicidal thoughts. But suicidal thoughts are different from actually dying by suicide. So there are 44,000 Americans die by suicide each year. And that's Americans, not necessarily adults. So there are more people who have suicidal thoughts and may not actually die by suicide than there are people who die by suicide. But there's still a significant amount of people who are dying by suicide. It's the 10th leading cause of death. It surpasses heart disease. So it's significant. And in my talk on suicide, I will talk about the parts that are suicidal parts and what we can do to actually learn how to have a different relationship with suicide, so that we can learn that acting on the suicidal thoughts isn't what the suicidal thoughts necessarily mean. That can help people prevent suicide, or help people learn that there's a different way. There's a different way to be with your suicidal thoughts. So I'll talk about that in the 4th video. So this is Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm hoping that by me talking about these mental health challenges, it will help open up a space for you in your life to be able to express your own struggles with mental health, with emotions, with just who you are, because our emotions are part of who we are. And I really truly do believe that when we are able to have conversations, when we're able to be open and honest about what our experiences are, it can actually help us. So I'm in conversation with you. I really do encourage you to leave comments, to reach out, to talk to your friends, to find safe people. Who are those people in your life? If there's anything you're going to do this month, I would see, can you identify 1, maybe 2? If you're lucky, maybe 3, maybe 5 people in your life who you feel comfortable enough with to be able to talk about what your own experience is in regards to some mental health challenge, whether that's anxiety or depression, trauma or suicidal thoughts, or a vast number of other mental health challenges that I'm not going to cover because there's so many. I can only cover so many. So I'm going to cover the ones that I actually work with. And so, can you identify people who feel safe? Now, I know that it can be a challenge to open up about mental health. I think in America where it's becoming more prevalent, or it's a little easier to talk about it, and different mental health challenges are stigmatized in different ways. I think depression and anxiety tend to be ones in which most people have some kind of awareness about and might be able to talk about. But I also know that there's some people who, when you talk about that to them, they're going to say, can you just get over it? If somebody says just get over it, that's not the person to talk to. They might need help, but don't open up about your own stuff to them. They might need help raising their awareness, and you could share resources with them. Maybe go to the Mental Health of America. There's a lot of statistics on there. There's a lot of like kind of what it's like. There's a lot on that website. You could go there. I'll put it in the comments, or I'll put it in the description, a link to it. You could also share my videos that I'm going to talk about. You can share my website. I'll put that in the description as well, with people who might need some education around mental health. So anyway, the challenge is, can you identify one or two people in your life who you can be open with, who you feel you can be a little bit honest with around what's happening in your own emotional mental health world. And maybe you can be a resource for them and they can be a resource for you, that you guys can have a conversation about it and just start talking about it. What is it like to live with anxiety? What is it like to live with depression? What is it like to live with trauma? What is it like to have suicidal thoughts? And maybe the conversation is a really quick 5-minute thing, just like, hey, I live with this. Curious if you do too, or curious if you want to have a conversation around it. And then, so that would be a challenge if you want to take it. Because I think right now we really need time to connect with each other, especially since we're going through this coronavirus COVID crisis where social distancing is a reality of our lives. We still need social connection. We still need to be with each other, but we might have to be a little bit creative with how we're with each other. We might have to use video or phone, or if you're going to see people that you're sitting, they're on their porch and you're standing on the sidewalk and you're wearing face masks, taking all the precautions. You definitely want you to be physically safe during this time if you're going to be reaching out to people, or if you live with somebody. That's a great person to have these conversations with if it's a safe person. So that's something you have to determine for yourself, is if it's safe. So connect, open conversations, and then leave comments for me below. Would love to hear how things go for you. I would love to hear if there's anything that you're particularly interested in or any information you'd really like on any mental health, particularly anxiety, depression, trauma, and suicide. If there's anything in the videos that you really hope that I touch on, leave those in the comments. I do read all the comments, and I take them into account when I make videos. So leave comments there. Also, if you have not subscribed and you want to make sure you get the upcoming videos, make sure you subscribe.